My name is Heather Feather. I am the owner of Rare Bird Medicine, and today's topic is the Divergent. That is a band, and it's also a way that a brain can function. It can function in a non-neurotypical way. I am what is considered neurodivergent or autistic. It's another term for it. I'm also an INFJ. So if you've ever seen the Myers-Briggs test, that is a thing that many psychologists will use to understand the matrix of a being that they're working with. And so just like neurodivergent people tend to be a smaller subset of the population, INFJs are like 2 to 3% of the population. I'm just a weird bird. Everybody, I'm just a weird bird. So come out. Thank you. Thank you. And that's okay. A rose isn't meant to be a daisy. A dog isn't meant to be a horse. We're not all meant to be alike. And neurodivergence doesn't look like what a lot of people would think. I've seen people in the process of dating where I'll mention that, because I'll do something that's pretty neurodivergent and I'll be like, sorry, that was kind of neurodivergent of me. And I can feel their attraction collapse, like, oh, ew, you're autistic. And it's like, you clearly don't know what this means, because if you watch Orion Kelly on YouTube, if you watch Mom on the Spectrum, if you watch any videos on YouTube about what it means to be neurodivergent, you'll find that neurodivergent people tend to be very literal. They tend to be very honest. They tend to really love the truth. And in some ways, they can be seen as insensitive because of their very direct communication, because they love the truth. As a neurodivergent person, I can't see anything wrong with that. Like, isn't the truth great? Don't you guys love the truth? I do. I would much rather someone hand me the truth than some fallacy that I have to dig through to figure out what actually is going on, They tend to have a lot of emotional intelligence, but they tend to get kind of sensory overload. So it can be alexithymia, is where we have a difficult time maybe describing our emotions, or might have a hard time articulating what it is I'm feeling. That's not because I lack feeling. I have tremendous emotional depth, tremendous feeling. In the Vedic, I'm all water. I'm all Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. Even in the tropical or Western astrology, Scorpio cusping Sun, Scorpio Mercury, Scorpio North Node, Cancer Moon, Cancer Mars. Heather's got a lot of water in this cup. I have a lot of emotions. And I've worked very hard to develop my EQ. The Book of Emotional Intelligence is a phenomenal book that talks about, the value of developing one's EQ. My experience, since I just learned that I'm on the spectrum when I was 48 and I'm now 49, I have said this entire time that I believe that neurodivergent people may be kind of an evolution that's occurring for mankind, because I've always experienced them to be deeply emotionally intelligent. My friend Marky, who is neurodivergent, and my dear friend Nicole's brother, when I first met him, I hugged him because I didn't know that his particular spectrum of neurodivergence is one in which he didn't like to be touched at all, not even compression. Years later, I went to see him and his mom with my friend Nicole, and we were going for a walk, and Marky grabbed my hand, which was a huge, it makes me want to cry every time I think of it. It's like the sweetest thing, because I know that's not easy for him. It's not easy for him to make that choice. And he does it anyhow, because he has so much emotional intelligence. He knows that I love him, and he knows that I'm okay with holding his hand. He used to always get in my bed, and his mom would go, "I'm so sorry." And I'd be like, "Marky can get in my bed anytime he wants." Like, he's welcome to be comfortable, and he's welcome to be himself, and he doesn't have to mask for me, And part of the deal of having a neurodivergent brain is that it's not one static way of being or one static thing, right? You may see someone with autism that moves their hands like this because it feels good and it's self-soothing and it helps them to calm their nervous system. I don't know that I've ever done that, but I do sometimes rub my finger when I'm talking to people. I might be rubbing my finger, just kind of moving energy, especially if they're complaining a lot or being really negative, because it's just like, this is unpleasant. So I'll just kind of move it out of my hand. Okay, we'll see when this is done. You know what I mean? Hopefully this won't last too long, but you're welcome to have a bad day, or you're welcome to complain. Like, it's not that, but some people just complain a lot, and so then the energy becomes like a wave of emotional onslaught. And as somebody who can be emotionally sensitive, it helps me to kind of move energy when there's an emotional onslaught present. It's important to note that I once saw this British woman. She had this dope kind of old school gas stove. It was just like vintage style gas stove, really cool. It had like 8 dials on the front, and she was pointing to her stove, and she was like, "This is like the neurodivergent brain. There are all these facets of the way somebody functions with their brain And each dial, let's say they all go to 0 to 100 on each dial, can be set to a different place. So one aspect of neurodivergence that's often present is you love to be alone. I love to be alone. I love to be alone. I love my own company. I love myself, I like myself. I enjoy my interests very, very much, which is another neurodivergent quality. You tend to have special interests and you tend to be able to hyper-focus on them. You may have great hyper-focus ability and you may be able to get into a flow state. And then you also may have trouble concentrating if you also have ADHD, which I do not have. And so I can get really hyper-focused on my work sometimes. And be like, Heather, Heather, Heather. It's like, yeah, yes. So one of those dials is focus. A thing with a neurodivergent brain is you may be able to hyper-focus. And it might be, you might have to like, oh, I'm sorry, yes, I'm in a room with other people, yes. And I love being alone. There's a Twilight Zone that I used to love as a kid because it was kind of like somebody made a Twilight Zone specifically for my worst fear. It was this guy that just wanted to be alone his whole life. And then the apocalypse happens and he's the only person that's alive. And all he wanted to do was read his books. And he's in this library full of books. And he's like, ah. And so he meets his heaven, if you will. But one of the next things he does is he drops his glasses and steps on them and then is not able to read the books. I was like, holy nightmare. Can you imagine? Because I used to spend so much time in the libraries as a kid. But I used to do strange things. When I was a kid, I would swing my arms really aggressively. And the librarian who I was friends with came up and she just modeled my behavior, kind of a neurolinguistic programming NLP thing. She was like, and I was like, it made me feel real awkward. But she was kind of showing me like, you're kind of being weird with your body in the hallway, child. And I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. Like, you can lack bodily awareness and sometimes do strange things, just because it's like, you don't have a tendency, it's kind of a punk brain because you have a tendency to not want to really follow societal norms. You don't understand societal importance of like, I'm sorry, that person's important because they're famous or rich. And why do we care about that? Why does that matter at all? Doesn't matter to me. I don't care. Are they nice? That's always my question. Are they kind? Are they fun to be around? Do you enjoy their company? Well, then great. I love that story. A divergent brain is not special. It's not necessarily better. It's just different. It just operates different. And I'm not a victim to having this brain. It doesn't make me less of a catch. It doesn't make me less of a person. It doesn't make me unlovable. And if you have neurodivergence or you have autism, you are not less lovable, less worthy of having the life you want to have or any of that. There are many things that I thought that I had that are actually part of a neurodivergent brain. So throughout my life, I've had a lot of people tell me I'm OCD. Like I've had roommates where I'm like, let me clean the baseboards. We're having company come over. I used to be like super what could be called OCD. I like a very tidy home and I still really like a tidy home, but I'm able to not be so neurotic about there being a dish in the sink at this point. You know what I mean? And so it's not that I have OCD. It's that your brain tends to not release things as easily. And so it's harder for me to get over a relationship. I tend to think relationships should last forever. And when they don't, it's hard for me to stop thinking of that person. I'm finally at a place, practicing celibacy up until February 13th, where I'm not thinking of any of my previous lovers. There's a person that I've been interested in for a long time. And I find it very difficult not to think of this person because just like my brain can have special interest in learning to read the tarot or in organic gardening or learning to build cob homes or whatever it is that I'm creating a magical mystical school that people can be accredited in, creating a real life Harry Potter situation. Let's go. Let's up level. Let's be yogis and let's practice levitation today, you guys. Just because I can be very focused in my given special interest, I can also become very focused in a person. And that doesn't mean I'm obsessive. It can seem like, okay, you're obsessive. I'm not obsessive. I'm just deeply interested. Like I said, I love my alone time. I love me. I like me. My self-esteem doesn't come from whether or not somebody approves of or chooses me. You don't have to choose me. Love that for you because I love the truth, which is another component of being neurodivergent. We tend to love the truth. If I find out someone's truth, love that truth. And I'm into that truth and I back that truth 110%. My current roommate, I initially met on a dating site and he was practicing celibacy. And I was like, I feel no sexual energy between us. And he's like, oh, I'm practicing celibacy. Well, I have a lot of EQ as a neurodivergent person, and I caught that. I picked that vibe up from you, you know? And so we just became friends. And I completely support him in his celibate 2025, and I have no romantic interest, intention, focus with him as an individual, because the truth is he's moving into self-development, and I want for him what he wants for him. So if somebody doesn't want to be with me, I love that for you. I want that for you as well. I don't have any addiction or attachment to someone else saying yes to me. I notice a lot of two-leggeds, and I don't know if it's a neurotypical thing, they do have a lot of addiction and attachment, you know? However, there can be ways in which it's difficult. There's a person of interest in the river of my life because he does really cute stuff. He's really nice to four-leggeds and two-leggeds, and I find him really interesting. It's difficult to not think of him, you know? And so as I've been practicing since January 1st to really focus on Heather, I notice it's difficult, difficult to not think of this fella because I would be so curious to be his friend and get to know him. I have interest in him. And that doesn't mean I have attachment, right? So I'm not necessarily attached because even if everyone in the universe from now until my death said no to me, that's cool. I have a lot of books to study and they are fascinating. There's some of the greatest minds in the world have written books. I mean, and Mother Nature has all kinds of things of interest and intrigue and fascination that I can place my eyes on any given day. So these are things that can sound very cold, you know? And I think there are ways in which being neurodivergent, you can seem or be perceived as if you're cold. And I'm not cold. I can sound cold, even about death. Some of the things I can say about death can sound very cold. But when you've buried 60 to 70 people, you can trust. You have a different relationship with death than somebody that's buried 1 to 10 people. You know, you've been experiencing it more. You're not going to talk about it in the same way. You don't have the same relationship with it. You may have come to a space in your own conclusions regarding death to where it doesn't seem like such a threat anymore. It just seems like a change has occurred. And so in no way am I superior in that perspective. It's just experience can cause someone to be more of a knower than they are just a think on these thingser, which is also, As a Man Thinketh, is a really good book. I'd highly recommend by James Allen. 11 books, and now I just want to think about books, which is kind of my neurodivergent brain. It's like, anyhow, back to books. So I have to be like, Heather, anyhow. Sometimes in these videos, I kind of like bounce around, and it's my goal to be very focused and very clear. I delete a lot of videos. If I'm in my ego at all, delete it. Doesn't matter how cute I looked, delete it. Doesn't matter at all. I can look buck-toothed and goofy as the day is long, but if divine spirit or divine truth came through, my aim is to teach truth. We're publishing that video, right? I love the truth. That's a deeply neurodivergent thing, is to love the truth and to actually have great emotional sensitivity. If I've wronged someone, if I've hurt them in any way, once I'm able to understand how and why that occurred and how and why I was wrong, I'm more than happy to express I was wrong. And people with neurodivergence tend to feel deeply remorseful once they understand that they're wrong, and they're more than happy to adopt new rules, new regulations, new ways of being to support greater sensitivity to others. However, the divergent brain is often perceived as being not affectionate or being cold. I experience myself as a deeply warm person. And as far as the dials of my brain go, there's a dial regarding touch. And some neurodivergent people don't want to be touched at all. They feel almost out of control in the way that their brain works. So they feel out of control when people hug them. I love hugs. I love touch. I love cuddles. I love it. I just don't like light touch. I don't mind giving others light touch. I've done a lot of back scratches in my life. I just don't like it, you know? I also don't like really bright lights or like weird sounds or talking when I'm trying to focus on something else, or, you know, so neurodivergent brains can have sometimes sensory issues or sensory sensitivity, but it doesn't mean they're a victim to that. There are ways we can find things to put in our ears or, you know, dim the lights. Heather likes really nice lighting in her space. And so if you're neurodivergent, I want you to know today that you're perfectly lovable and amazing in the way that you are. A lot of neurodivergent people tend to have pretty good self-esteem because they don't have as much attachment as to what others think of them. It's also good to know that not everyone is going to get you, but you don't have to mask. You don't have to hide who you are because there's nothing wrong with who you be. You can always subscribe to Rare Bird Medicine on YouTube, like and comment there. I always love your thoughts. I'm Wynn.